watched the new episode of Willow, and man, if there was a show that was in one ear, out the other, I mean, I think this would probably be it. Because it's like, I'm watching the show, and I have zero interest in it. And it's like, look, here's the thing. I said this the first week I covered this show. I don't have the cultural touchstones for Willow. I don't have the background for Willow to be able to say, like, oh, this is what this is. I didn't watch Willow in, 1988 because I wouldn't be born for another 6 years, and I have not watched it since. I'm a fan of high fantasy and swords and sorcery and all that kind of stuff. I'm totally in on all of that, and I totally, would be down with the show if the show was good. But, like, the issue is, like, I know enough to know that Warwick Davis should not be reduced to vehicle of exposition. And that be his entire role in the title character of the show. His entire role in the show is to explain everything. What the fuck? Like, how the fuck does that happen? Like, at some point during the script stage, someone should be looking at this and being like, hey, Willow doesn't have a ton to do besides be exposition and a Deus Ex Machina when needed. Like, what the fuck? Why is it that... How did it get that far? And then all this bullshit with the, like, oh, don't eat the goo that comes out of them. Like, oh, they needed to be told this? Like, I'm sorry. Like, how the fuck did we get to this point? Like, if you need to ingest it to get it, like, to have the impact of this goo crap, like, change it in the script phase. Like, there's a very easy way to solve this problem. Like honestly, like, I don't understand the issue that went into this, because, like, at the end of the day, all they had to do was be like, oh, it could be airborne, it could be this, it could be this. Just don't touch it. It could, like, don't let it touch you as it's moving. Like, there are any number of other ways to do it, but, like, saying, oh, don't eat it, and it's like, I see that, and I'm like, this is a very easy thing to not get. Like, I don't know. And again, it's like, I have none of the characters have really endeared themselves to me, where I'm like, I don't care about any of these people. Like, it looks so cheap, and I've said this before as a problem I have with this show, is it looks so cheap. Like, there's no heft to the swords for the swordplay, where it's like any character is in any real sense of danger. Like, whenever they're sword fighting, it's like you have these characters who are, they're sword fighting, and it's like it looks so poorly done that it's like there's no stakes to it. Because it's like, even if someone could die in the fight, and again, we're taking main characters and putting them into the fights, and it's like, they're not going to kill off the main character, and she's the only one who ever does the fighting, and it's like, look, let someone else do the fighting. Let someone disposable do the fighting, because there are a few characters here who are basically never going to die until possibly the finale. And even then, I would say probably not the finale. Like, I don't think the main characters in any capacity are dying. I think Tony Revolari could end up dying. Like he's someone you can put in peril and have that work. Like, watching the show, it's like, does anyone for a second think they're gonna kill off, what's it called? They're gonna kill off, what's his name? What the fuck's the girl's name? The main girl. I forgot the main girl's name. Or the one that Erin Kellyman plays. Like, they're not gonna be killed off. And the thing is, too, it's like, every episode that goes by where the main girl and the knight don't make up, like, it's another episode where it's like, they can kill her off, but they never put her in any peril that makes you think that they could kill her off. Because that would be, like, if they did that, that would at least give some motivation to, or give something resembling emotional depth to any of the characters. Like, that's the other thing, too, is that none of the characters have any emotional depth, where it's, like, it's very plot-driven. We're all about the plot. We're all about this magic thing that's going to destroy the world if we don't do our thing and stop it. Like, you gotta have some emotional depth to it. You gotta make the stakes personal. You have to do something to make it seem like these characters need to do it. Otherwise, things will get bad. And for them personally. Like, and I don't have that feeling that any character here is doing that, besides this altruistic, like, the sense of the greater good. Which is fine if we know who the characters are. But since they're all, like, 18, 19 years old, who gives a fuck? Like, they're heroes because their archetype is hero, which is not a good way to run a story. I don't know. I watched this and I'm just like, I don't understand how it got to this point in the script without being like, can we, like, get another pass on this? Like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, it is one of the weirdest shows I've ever seen, because it's like, it's not as bad as the Santa Clauses, because at least the Santa Clauses, like, you're watching it and you're like, alright, well, it's a little shitty, but, fucking truck, like, it's a little shitty, but, it's definitely not the budget of Willow, and, nothing ever makes sense. Like, with Willow, at least there's kind of the redeeming thing that there's, like, something resembling production value, and the effects are not terrible, but the fact that that's the saving grace of the show, and that the entire show is built on the back of, on the back of the whole nonsense with, it looking good, but it looking good only gets you so far. It doesn't get you across the finish line of being like, okay, well, this is a passable show that is worth watching on a weekly basis, and I think that that's where the show really falls apart, for me at least, where it's like, I need this show to make me feel like I am doing, I'm here for a reason, and not just, and I feel like this is part of the problem with the Marvel shows, too, for a little bit, where it's like, especially WandaVision, I had this problem, where if it weren't for the name, I wouldn't care. It's not like, and it's another Disney Plus show, but it's in French, Parallels, which had some of the weirdest dubbing I've ever seen, but, like, I was enthralled by that show, and it's not based on anything. It's a great show, and I think that that's part of the, the whole thing where it's like, alright, well, if that's the case, then more, I just don't know what to say about it. Like, if the case is that, like, they built intriguing characters in that show without being tied to IP, which is somewhat, which is respectable that they managed to do that. And I feel like they should have tried to do the same with this show, but the problem is because they have the IP, and I think what happens is when you do these nostalgia sequels, I think what ends up happening is they lean into, the idea that people will know what's going on because it's a legacy sequel. They lean into that a little too hard, and what you end up with is characters who don't quite make a lot of sense and do things because you expect them to, because that's kind of what happened the last time they did this, but it doesn't quite work because all it's doing is playing on expectations. And then when someone tries to deviate from that, you end up with The Last Jedi and people bitching about it 5 years later. And I don't understand quite, like here's the, like, what they need to do with a legacy sequel is, number one, they need to stop doing these, because the only thing this is doing is making it kind of weird, that it's happening in this way. It's just kind of, it's actively harming the story to go out of your way and do this nonsense in this way, because all it's doing is making it where you're leaning too hard on what people know and hoping that'll be enough to carry you when it's not even close to being enough to carry you. But yeah, I guess I have very strong feelings on this, if you can tell. But on that note, I think we'll wrap up there for today, because I really don't have too much more to say about this. And the whole thing with Tony Revellari was totally predictable, because it's not like they're doing anything entirely unique. You just gotta figure out what's going on. But we'll wrap up there for today. The next episode we have is going to be tonight. I'm going to see The Whale, the Darren Aronofsky movie. We're getting to the end of the year, folks. And as we get to the end of the year, the pickings get slim. And I was looking at the Variety rankings for Best Picture and where they put everything. And there are a few movies I still haven't seen yet in that list. Like, I haven't seen Tar, I haven't seen RRR, I haven't seen... there are a few others on there that I have. Well, Woman Talking hasn't come out yet. And Babylon is just outside the top 10, but obviously Babylon hasn't come out yet either. But, like, when these things happen, like, you know, when I look at this list and I'm like, you know, the top 10 is like, you know, a bunch of movies that everyone's heard of, and then you get you get just below that, and you're like, oh, that's, you know, and we got like The Woman King and Wakanda Forever and Babylon, and it's like all these big commercial movies, and I'm like, it really has not been a great year for movies. It's been pretty not great, I think, especially compared to previous years, where it's like there's been, like, the fact of the matter is, about half of my top 10 are movies that came out before, before the mid-year point, which is not good. There were some movies that came out in the back half, so don't just think that my top 10 is going to be 5, the top 5 is going to be the same, and then 5 after is going to be the back half. It's going to be mixed in, and I think that something got bumped off. Yeah, because one of the movies that's on there, I don't count as second half of the year because its premiere was in February. I just didn't see it until July or August. Yeah. Well, and 2 of them then don't count. Because they were early in the year premieres. Because one premiered at Cannes, one premiered at Sundance. Anywho. So yeah, so The Whale is going to be tonight. I don't know if The Whale is going to bump anything out. But we'll find out when we see it. Then there is also, that was a fucking maneuver right there. Because I still have to see Women Talking. I still have to see White Noise. I could watch Descendant. Descendant could, you know, be a sleeper that knocks into the top 10. Maybe I'll watch Descendant tonight. No, not The Descendant. Descendant. Because The Descendant was the George Clooney movie. Descendants is that Disney show. And Descendant is the documentary. It's totally unrelated to any of that. So maybe we'll do Descendant tomorrow morning. Or Senior. The Robert Downey Senior documentary. I don't know. Netflix has a few documentaries I want to watch that I haven't gotten around to yet. But I think that's it for today. We'll wrap up there. Our next episode will be, like I said, The Whale tonight, with Brandon Fraser.